Hello, and welcome once again to Loveland's Talking. My name is Andy Hiller. I'm the Public Information Officer here for the City of Loveland government, and we're here with you this month, as we are every month, to share with you, the public, information about what's going on with your city government. Today we're going to be talking about what's ahead for the year 2013 from your city government. In addition to the day-to-day services that you're accustomed to, we will be talking about some of the goals that have been set for this year. Today's guests are Channel 16's, without qualification, I think I can say most visible faces. They are the quote host and co-anchor of a weekly Tuesday night show. It's not a prime time show because it begins at 6:30, but it always works its way into prime time and very often beyond, sometimes very late into the evening. I'm talking, of course, about the city's city council meetings, both the regular meetings and the special study sessions that are broadcast here live on Channel 16. And if you miss it, they are repeated on Channel 16 as the week goes on. Plus, you can see them, you can click and see them online a day or two after the actual broadcast. So, not that these two fellows need any real introduction, but I will have you introduce yourselves, and we will start with Sir William over here.
It's the first time I've been called that in a while. I'm Bill Cahill. I'm the city manager of Loveland.
Okay.
And I'm Cecil Gutierrez. I'm the mayor of Loveland.
Thank you, guys. I know, and it's my understanding, that virtually every year you two and a group of your closest colleagues get together and have a special gathering every year. I know it sounds like a party and it's not a New Year's Eve type thing, but in fact it's not at all a party. You know what I'm referring to. Tell me about this gathering.
Well, it's our annual goal-setting session that the City Council does in order for us to be able to help our staff figure out their work plan for the year. It's an opportunity for us to give our staff the feedback that they need, and as an entire council to set those goals that we've got for the coming year. We also invite our senior staff, our department heads and management team. So. And that's basically what it is.
And is this like a 2-week excursion in Cancun?
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
No, we always meet here in the city, and it's a one-day event. It's usually all day Saturday. We start about 8 o'clock in the morning and usually finish about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
This year was January 26th, Saturday, out at Group Publishing here in Loveland. And they've been very good to work with and letting us use their facilities. Sometimes in the past we've done it in the basement gallery at the museum. So no, it's not a 2-week excursion on a cruise ship.
Fine. Well, it's a good thing it's not a cruise ship for the day, actually. Yeah, it might be a 3-week excursion if you were on a cruise ship. Obviously the city has a lot of normal responsibilities, kind of day-to-day responsibilities that may range from fighting a firefighter, a wildfire, to perhaps one of the library events where they have a story time with a bunch of children. But your goals are, in addition to this, in kind of a broader area. I understand you kind of set 3 areas of goals, and would you expound on that, please?
Well, this year our top 3 goals. Now we've always got goals that carry over from one year to the next, and we always take a look at those to see where we are and evaluate where we are and where we've been, and to celebrate the successes that we've had in the previous years, but also to set new goals and where we're headed for the year. So this year we had 3 major areas that the City Council set as goals for 2013: public safety, economic vitality, and infrastructure. And then we had some different projects that would fall underneath each one of those. So.
Okay.
You might say these 3 goal areas have remained pretty steady for 3 years now. And I think it reflects the City Council's priorities year to year that don't change. that number one for the council every year is public safety. That's really the highest calling. Economic vitality. Without an economically robust community, we wouldn't have the revenue and the money to do much else. So it's always very important. And then infrastructure was a special point of emphasis last year in 2012. This year it continues. And by infrastructure, we mean pipes in the ground, sewer, water, stormwater, streets, bridges, other vital parts of the built community that we've got to have in order to deliver services.
Okay.
Electricity, stormwater, all
Yeah,
of
okay.
those things
Yeah.
that we all take for granted all the time.
Indeed, indeed. Okay. Well, let's start with public safety. I can't help but mention that both a police department survey and the annual citywide survey listed or returned the response from the community that the community feels very safe and secure here in the city, and they are very pleased. I mean, public safety was number one on the 24-question list for the city survey and scored very highly on the police survey as well.
And we were pleased with that result of the public survey. I was very pleased to see that, where the public's safety was our number one concern and has been, that our citizens see the end result of all of that effort.
And when I think of public safety, of course, police and fire come to mind, and that's kind of on the list here. So let's talk about, whoops, I've got the wrong slides going up here. Let's talk about what you guys have in mind in terms of goals for the police department.
Police was a very heavy emphasis this year. I might say that that doesn't slight our other safety department, fire, because fire probably got more emphasis last year in 2012. It just depends on what activities and projects we have going at the time. But for police this year, there were really two things that were very important. One is to develop a long-range police staffing and resources plan. Let's look out 10 years, figure out where we need to be in police services 10 years out, and then figure out how we're going to get there in terms of our human resources, the officers on the street and everybody backing them up. And secondly, the other police priority for the year is for a police training facility that would include a firing range. We've been operating with a firing range for some time that we felt is not quite up to the standard that we'd like to have, and there are some other training needs too. So that's a project that we want to put on the books, define it, and then be able to start on it.
I see.
And with that police staffing plan, it's important for us to do that evaluation going forward. It's very important to know where we're going to be in 10 years, and to be able to plan for that 10-year, where we're going to be in 10 years, and so that we can make that a very, very smooth plan. We did this with the fire department here a couple of years ago.
Yep.
With the move to the fire authority, and the staffing plan was looked at very, very in depth. So that's important for us to achieve the same thing with our police department.
Okay. And in terms of fire, there will be one very visible change. I think it'll begin this coming year. There's going to be kind of a new fire station, not an additional fire station, but a new one.
The picture that you have up on the screen or showing is Fire Station 2 in its present location, which is at North Lake Park. And it's a good station, except that as the community has grown, it's no longer in exactly the right place. The science of locating fire stations is that you've got to sprinkle them around the community so that you can achieve response times in time to get to a fire, in time to get somebody who's having a health problem or makes a medical call. So we have a standard for reaching 95% of the calls within a 6-minute radius. Fire Station 2 is no longer in the right place. And so, because we've grown to the north and the west. So there's a new fire station that will be built on 29th Street west of Wilson Avenue near the new location for Mahaffey Park.
And when will ground be broken on that? Are plans drawn up and ready to go? Will we see shovels and bulldozers and that sort of thing out there later this year, or is that still in the works?
Probably have a groundbreaking mid-year.
Uh-huh.
The design is being done right now.
I see.
Right. And this again, this plan to move forward with Fire Station 2, again, was part of that long 2 or 3 year effort to evaluate where our fire department was, not just in staffing, but also those response times, and to best meet the needs, safety needs of our citizens, and how we could better get to the fires and to those medical calls in a timely manner.
Okay. And you have a rough completion date for the new Fire Station 2?
Should be in service by probably the third quarter of 2014, so the fall of 2014. We may make it earlier, but that's kind of our date that we have to get it.
I see. Okay.
And we will also be adding a heavy rescue squad out at Fire Station 2, which was another one of those needs that was identified in the long-term strategic plan for the fire department, for the fire authority.
Great. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to move to the next slide, which has to do with economic vitality. And of course, unlike maybe police officers visible on the street or a new fire station, economic vitality efforts are not nearly as visible. The picture on the screen, of course, is Rocky Mountain Center for Innovation and Technology, almost known as ACE and formerly known as Agilent and an HP before that, but we all know the big site on Taft and 402. What's happening out there?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'll take the first shot.
Okay.
And as you said, this is always the number one question that we get about economic development in Loveland. What's happening with the old HP and Agilent site? Well, of course, the city owned this site, this property, for a brief time in 2012. We owned it for about 6 months, having bought it from Agilent. We resold it to an investor group from Kentucky, Cumberland and Western. Those folks have invested quite a bit more money in this property. They've repaved the parking lots, they've redone the roofs, they are maintaining it in excellent condition, and they are aggressively marketing it for new tenants to come in, rent the space, and create new jobs there. And their vision is the same as our vision had been, which is it should be a high-tech or technology-driven employment center. So we're all on the same page about that. One of the first things on the list that the council talked about this year is doing a business accelerator project in this building. And in fact, that'll go to the council for extensive discussion next week. That'll be up on the council's agenda, and the idea there is to create a service center within this building that newer companies can come into, not baby companies that are brand new, but those that have already gotten to the point where they have a product and they can put it out to market, and this accelerator will help them bring that product to market and create more jobs.
I see. Okay.
And I think for that site, you know, from day one since we've talked about this, I think it's from the time I got on to city council, this has been a topic of discussion, how we revitalize that particular property. And it's I guess since the ACE initiatives first started, and I think one of my biggest jobs in the community has always been expectation management, because because anytime you try to revitalize a site of that size, it's going to take some time.
Sure.
And so I've always tried to be out there in the community saying, it'll go. We just have to be patient. And I always try to remind them it took years for that campus to be built up when HP was out there. They didn't start with 5 buildings with 800,000 square feet out there.
Right.
They started with 1 building. Actually, they started with the Quonset hut downtown here.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it takes time. So patience.
And this is always on people's minds. Anywhere I go, people ask the question, what's happening?
Sure. Uh-huh.
And so I think it's important for people to know the vision is still the same as it has been. The new owners are working on it. And in fact, one of the things that people got excited about with ACE was having a NASA connection. We don't call it ACE anymore, that's not the name, but the NASA connection is still there. And Cumberland and Western, the new owners, actually have a signed agreement with NASA for the Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, in which Cumberland and Western is paying for the development of an invention within the Glenn Research Center, and then they in turn will get the commercial rights to take that invention and turn it into a real business once it is complete. So that connection's still here, so we're still going to see that, and we have also, with the city, continue to have a direct connection with NASA at the Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. Very tight connection.
Okay. And one other benefit that we will see or be able to set foot on, if I understand the timing, very soon is when the city bought the entire site. It includes 140, 150 acres, if I'm correct, of open land. When the city resold it, the city held on to that open land, and that's being developed for public use. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's in the process right now. River's Edge, natural open space, will be developed over the next, probably what, Bill, the next year and a half?
The next year.
And so then the public will have access to some of that area as we finish the development there. So our Open Lands Commission and Open Lands folks are diligently working on that.
Great. Great.
We've just chosen the contractor to do that work, so people will actually see contractors out there doing that work shortly. We have fishing ponds, we have trails, we have natural area. It's going to be a huge addition for the benefit of the people here in Loveland.
And right in the heart of town, so to speak, as opposed to on the outlying fringe. It'll be very convenient for people.
This almost seems like a great connection, because we've got the ball fields down there, the barn, and then we've got the Fairgrounds Park, and then starting to move up towards that connection to the downtown. So I think it's really a good connection.
Great, great. Well, let's move from Taft Avenue to more of the heart of town, to downtown. I know part of the goal setting and plans have to do, as they have in past years, with some project and developments and issues downtown.
Well, and I think that this reflects a long-standing priority for the city. When I came here a little over 2 years ago, I'd say there were 3 big priorities for the city council at that time. One was economic development that we're talking about.
Yes.
Second is downtown as a special area, and of course we've done a number of projects downtown in the last couple of years, starting another one right now, the Brinkman project. But what the council looked at in the goal setting session this year was to go back and look at our total downtown strategy, what we intend to do and how we're going to do it, revisit that, see if we want to reaffirm it, or do we want to make any kind of a course correction and change the way that we deal with downtown.
Well, we have, as a city, have been dealing with the downtown for over 6 years through the Loveland Downtown Team as one entity. That Loveland Downtown Team has been a partnership with the Downtown Loveland Association, the merchants down there, the property owners down there. A lot of work and a lot of study has gone into developing plans and strategic plans. A lot of those things are in place, and I think one of the things that that happens is, as time goes by, we have new people on council, and it's always good to go back, review where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed, and like Bill says, do we reaffirm those plans that we've had? But we've had a significant number of studies. We've done a parking study. We've had a study for the housing, how much housing we need down there, and those are just examples. What kinds of businesses and retail we need to attract to the downtown. So all of those studies have been done, infrastructure studies. So we just need to go back and revisit those and try to reaffirm where we are with all of those.
Okay. And
I think one of the moments at the advance that I remember is when the mayor took out a pile of downtown plans and put it on the desk and said, here's how many plans we already have. So this effort that we're doing this year is not to create another plan. is to make sure that we properly tied together everything that we want to do out of the existing plans, refresh, and make sure that everybody is still going in the same direction.
Okay. And you mentioned one a project that will become very visible here in the near future. You mentioned the Brinkman project, but perhaps you can tell the folks what that is if they're not directly familiar with it by that name.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bill, go ahead.
Brinkman is the name of the development company that we're partnering with in the project. That's why we call it that. It's at the corner of 6th and Lincoln Streets downtown, just north of the museum, where the city acquired the Home State Bank property at that corner several years ago. And that property is being sold to the Brinkmans, and the Brinkman company will put together a project there and start construction this year. It'll be a 5-story apartment building with mixed use on the ground floor. There will be 30 to 35 apartments in it, about 50. I've got that number wrong. And then we'll have mixed use live workspaces on the ground floor. So it's going to be the biggest private sector investment in downtown Loveland since Lincoln Place was put in. So it's a pretty big project for us.
It is. It's and it's great to see that. That's another one of those big catalyst projects that we're, it's and again, it's kind of like the HP facility out there. All of these projects take time to develop. They take time to get through the process, and so I think we've made significant progress over the last 6 years. And one of the things that's always mentioned is, well, gosh, the city's making an awful lot of investment in the downtown, but when you take a look at the amount of private investment, there has been significant numbers of dollars invested in by the private sector in the downtown. So that's also something that we need to take a look at. We invest, but then the private sector invests as well. And I think that's the other reason for us taking a look this year is how are we doing with that investment, private, public investment? Is it matching up to where we want to be and where we want to go? And how do we move forward with all of those projects?
Okay. Well, also downtown, and of course, immediately adjacent to what will be the Brinkman project, of course, is consideration of the future of the museum gallery and the cultural services emphasis that the city has. Can you elaborate on that just a bit?
Sure. About a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, we had a study session at the City Council on this very topic. And the question is, if we are going to move forward and expand the museum, how do we fund the operations of that museum in the future? And so what the council has taken a look at, and will be looking at again later this year, is to see if there is any desire or possibility for creating a new funding source for the operating costs of the museum that would support it if we did build the expansion. There are a number of reasons to do this expansion. We need more exhibit space. We have actually the opportunity to possibly acquire some more collections and do some things in the museum that we haven't been able to before. But we do want to make sure that we're solid on the operating cost side and that we don't just look to the building. So that's the focus that the council has set, I think, really for the coming year, and we'll be revisiting that whole issue again.
We know the what and the why, we just don't know the how just yet. And that's always the struggle is the how. How do we do this and how do we get this done? So I think that's the goal for the year, is to figure out the how.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's move east, if we may, because I know another area that you are going to be looking at is, if you can see the yellow highlight here, that's Highway 402 coming off I-25. What do you have in mind out there?
Well, I think one of the things that we've had in mind, and we've had in mind for a number of years now, it's just that we're finally bringing some focus to it, is that we think that's going to be the next major employment corridor for the city. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we know what that's going to look like, what the possibilities are, how we will proceed, so that we do that long-range planning so that we're not caught short when the development actually starts to move out that way. So we've got neighbors out there that we need to work with to see, because our growth management area and Johnstown's growth management area are next to each other and sometimes overlap. Yeah. So we've got to be able to work collaboratively with our Johnstown neighbors and make that long range plan for both cities to be successful.
Sure. Yeah. And as the mayor said, this could be, over the next 20 to 25 years, the big growth area for the city of Loveland. We do need to prepare for that. And so the scope of this plan doesn't just deal with the highway itself and how wide is the highway and those kinds of things. It also deals with what kinds of land uses, new office complexes, new employers, what kind of development standards do we want to have out in that area.
And is that when you mentioned highway, it just occurred to me, who owns that? Is that a city road? Is that a county road, a state road?
It's a state highway. As you pick it up at 287 and runs east from there, and actually runs east of I-25 out into Weld County. It's not a very long state highway. It's one of the shorter ones in the state. So there have been some conversations over the past years about the city of Loveland potentially taking that over from the state of Colorado. And that would depend on the deal to be struck and what condition the road is, and at the time that we would accept it, and what financing would come with it.
Okay, so that's dealing with the DOT, Department of Transportation, is another element that you guys need to work with and consider as this whole plan is put together.
The other piece of this that we have to take really long-term view of is the fact that, like Bill says, it goes out into Weld County, and it goes, the road itself may not be Highway 402 at a certain point into Weld County, but that road runs into a lot of the southern part of Greeley, Evans, and so on, that at some point we may need to be looking at that long-term with our neighbors to the east and saying this may be a significant east-west corridor as we move along. What we don't want to do is overdevelop to the point to where we've impeded that significant east-west corridor.
I see. So another group of folks to coordinate and
Absolutely.
Discuss with. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
It gets larger and larger. Okay, well, the third element on our goals list is infrastructure, and you talked about it a bit earlier. When I think of infrastructure, this is kind of what I think of, a big bridge or as pipelines or things that take a lot of concrete and steel and usually substantial funding. Well, what are some of the things that you folks are going to be concentrating on in terms of infrastructure?
Well, one of the things that I think came up for discussion at our goal-setting session were a new look at the regional transportation projects that are part of the master finance agreement with the Centera Metropolitan District. We have seen some significant regional improvements out in that area as a result of that project being in place. So now we need to take a look as that development continues to grow out there. What will the next regional improvements be? And probably one of the ones that has been discussed quite a bit is how do we take traffic off of Highway 34 and I-25, because currently we have shoppers that go from the east side to the west side and vice versa of I-25 to get to the different shopping areas. So one of the ways to try to solve that problem is if you put a Kendall Parkway all the way through from Centera over to the other side, to the west side of I-25 by going under I-25. That's one of the discussions of maybe one of the next future regional improvements.
I I see, going under I-25, and that sounds like a project that involves a lot of steel, concrete, and money.
It does.
Probably.
It does. And for those who can't quite place this, Kendall Parkway is that road that runs along the north edge of the promenade shops out at Centera, goes from Centera Boulevard west toward I-25, and then it dead ends kind of behind the theaters there. And the idea has always been that that road would extend under I-25 and go to the other side and connect with Rocky Mountain Boulevard on the other side, and then even go further west than that, ultimately provide a good connector with Boyd Lake Avenue. So it's been in the plans, but it hasn't elevated up the plans to the point that there's money for it. And so what we'll talk about this year is elevating that and then working with the Metro District to get that funded and be able to push that on through, because it will really help, we think, with traffic on 34 and 25. It will help open up a little more area there for good development, good high-quality development. So it has some pluses all around.
And you know, I want to make sure everybody understands that we've had some real regional successes with what we've done out there with those regional projects. The I-25-34 interchange project, that has been, I think, a real success to try to help the safety of that intersection. Is major improvements.
Absolutely.
There. The Crossroads intersection at I-25 has been greatly improved, and that Centera Boulevard all the way up to reach the ranch and all of that area up in that area, that Crossroads Boulevard area, has been fantastic.
And the next thing on our list here is something else in that neighborhood, so to speak, and something that kind of, I think it's fair to say, took the city by a bit of a surprise last year, and that was the departure of the Allegiant Airlines from our airport. And when I say our, it's the Fort Collins Loveland. It's owned by both communities. And I know one of the goals and aims, and personally I hope it's successful because I've used that as very convenient in the past, is to perhaps find another airline, another carrier to go in and take advantage of the demand at that airport.
We have, and our airport staff is working very diligently, as is the airport steering committee, to try to bring another airline into the city. But of course, that's again one of those tough nuts to crack. And so we've hired a consulting group that is assisting our airport staff and the two cities to try to move that forward.
And we've got really two efforts going side by side at the airport right now on this. One of them is go out and get a new airline. And I think everybody would say, hey, that's a great idea, let's go do it. It is going to be tough. Our consultant that we're working with, who is really very expert in this field, because they operate airports and they have successfully gotten airlines for other airports in the past. Their best estimate is it could be a year, could be a year and a half for that to happen. So I don't think people should think this is going to happen next week. Maybe we get lucky, maybe it happens faster, and the harder we work, the luckier we will get, so we'll work hard on that. The second piece is that as Allegiant was leaving, they said some things about safety at the airport. We believe this is a very safe airport. What they were talking about is the absence of air traffic control. And so we've looked at that, and the usual way that you get air traffic control is to have a control tower at the airport. A control tower is pretty expensive. We don't have one. And so we've been looking at an entirely different way to do air traffic control that's called blended airspace. It's kind of on the cutting edge of applying a lot of established technologies together as a working unit so that our air traffic here could be controlled from a remote location using radar, using other electronics that would allow an air traffic controller in another location to see Loveland, Fort Collins, just as accurately as if he were sitting here in a tower, maybe better. And so we're working on that, and that's a pretty inexpensive solution to air traffic control.
Really inexpensive. It's cutting
Well,
edge stuff.
nothing is ever
Sounds
inexpensive,
Very,
Yeah.
very
but much,
expensive.
yeah, much less expensive, shall we say, than
Yeah.
a tower. A
Oh,
tower
yeah.
is very, very expensive.
Well, from a layman's perspective, it sounds pretty neat, pretty cool to see all this done, kind of using all the new technology and that sort of thing. I have visions of a big video screen with lots of airplanes on it.
Well, it's kind of like that. And actually, the electronics are so good now that sometimes you can more accurately see with the electronics than you can with a naked eye. So there are parts of this technology that have been demonstrated over the last year or two up at some of the mountain airports in Colorado. The state aviation division is investing quite a bit of money in this effort. So is the Federal Aviation Administration. So we are one of a couple of airports that we think will be brought along with this new technology. And the amount of money that we're talking about saving here is several $1 million. To build a tower could be a $5 to $7 million experience. And then you have to pay for staffing it.
Right, 24/7.
24/7, all the time. With this system, we think there is probably way less than $1 million of equipment cost. And we really don't have to pay for the controllers after that because they'll be at someone else's location. They're already on the job.
I see.
And this would just add a little bit to their workload.
I gotcha. Huh.
We're also taking a look at, always taking a look at economic development in and around the airport. And I think there are there are a couple of companies that are expanding out there. That's always a good news when there are companies in and around that area that are expanding their businesses. Otterbox, as an example, is building a huge addition to their hangar out there. They've purchased a couple more planes, so they needed space to put them in. So there are those kinds of expansions that are happening in and around the airport as well. We have a new business out there that I'm aware of that is just getting ready to move in to a new facility out there called Just Office Furniture. They're getting ready to move in out there. Yancey's, well, it's not Yancey's anymore, and I'm going to forget the name of the company that's taken over Yancey's, but they're
Food service.
so, yeah, I think that's what it is expanding their facility out there, and so that's also always welcome out there.
Yeah, and that'll be another point of emphasis this year in economic development is creating a better strategy and activating that strategy for how to bring that airport area alive economically. We have still a pretty good amount of industrial land out there yet to be developed on which we can attract new industry. We've got great connections with the airport, and so we think there's a lot of opportunity there.
And we got a little extra attention at the airport, I guess it's about 6 months ago now, when we had Air Force One land at our airport, which I, personally, as an airplane, as somebody who enjoys seeing airplanes, I thought that was pretty cool. And Air Force One, I'll just throw this out in case folks at home don't need to know this, because I thought it was cool, so I'll share it. Hopefully other folks will. When you think of Air Force One, you think of the big 747, huge, enormous aircraft. And our airport is not able to handle that plane, and I've learned it's not because of the length of the runway, but because of the weight of the plane, however much concrete or anything. So they used a 757, which is kind of like what you and I might fly on a trip to the East Coast, and it says USA across the top. But what I learned is any plane that the president is in, if he's in a Piper Cub, it becomes Air Force One.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to see it land and
Yeah.
see it take off as well. So,
Yeah, it was, and we've got pictures. So, okay, let's change the subject a little bit and go from perhaps building and improvements at the airport to building in general, and a look at CEFs. We hear that term a lot. What is it, and why should we be concerned about it?
Well, capital expansion fees is what CEF stands for. These are fees that we charge developers up front And we have a formula by how we charge those fees for a variety of the services that we provide. Historically, back in the early '80s, this community went through a serious discussion about how growth could pay for itself. And the end result was the development of these capital expansion fees. And I liken it to when you join a golf club, you are charged a fee to come in that helps defray some of those costs and of having built that golf course and to maintain that golf course at a certain level. So this is for new people coming into the city. These are their dues that they have to pay to get belong to the city of Loveland. I guess that's one way of explaining it. It's because it can become pretty difficult to explain a long ways. But our goal this year is to take a look at. They worked very well from the early '80s when we were still a young city and a developing city. But as we have matured, most of us on council have come to the realization that maybe the way we're charging those fees isn't the best way to do it, because we've grown, we're starting to mature, we're starting to see that down the road there will be that end game, and what will the ultimate facilities be, and we need to take a look at how to do that, and so strategic plans long-term will help us determine that.
It's important to recognize how important these fees are in the overall development of the city, because they do two things. One is they pay for new improvements. So the expansion of the Chilson Rec Center in the past couple of years was paid for by these fees. The expansion of the library is paid for by these fees. They're not paid for, those things are not paid for by ordinary taxes, either sales taxes or property taxes through a mill levy. If we're building something new in the community, this is probably where the money comes from. And these impact fees, and that's what they are termed in other communities, are designed to account for the impact of new development on our existing capital infrastructure, our buildings, our roads, our sewer pipes. And so that's why they're there. The other thing that these fees do is that they help keep property taxes low. That is, your mill levies that are paid by citizens and their property tax bills each year are lower than they would be otherwise because these costs are being charged to new development. And so there's a very direct interest, I think, that everybody in Loveland has in what these fees are.
And that's those fees have actually, we hear an awful lot about how the city is in essence debt-free.
Yes.
And a lot of cities have gone into bonding in order to add new buildings and so on. And so the methodology behind saving up for these buildings, and that's exactly what these impact fees help us do. We save the money as we go along, and then when we absolutely need that new facility or addition to the facility, we're able to pay for it without having to go to the bonding and borrowing method. So I think that's been a great way for this city to move forward, and we can see the result of that. Like Bill says, the museum and the Chilson additions recently have been two of those. And there have been some other things that we haven't seen that are underground, some of those pipes, some of that Washington outfall project, some of that was some of those.
That's the stormwater project.
Stormwater project, big stormwater project that has been in several phases.
Well, we've talked about the three major goals that you mentioned, public safety, economic vitality, and infrastructure. It's my understanding there are a couple of other things that didn't quite make it to the major league goals list, but if you'd want to mention them for a moment or two, that would be great. In my notes, it has to do with new budgetary methods and possibly some changes for funding of some of the nonprofits that the city assists.
Go ahead. The budget, I'll let Bill talk about budget.
okay.
That's the most
I
fun.
think the new budgetary methods may be such an exciting topic, it will make the viewers' eyes glaze over and they can go to sleep. It's not that exciting a topic unless you're involved in the business of running a city. And if you're doing that, then it's pretty darn important.
Okay.
We budget using pretty traditional methods at the City of Loveland, and what this has to do with is taking a look at a couple of new things. Internally, to allocate our costs from certain departments to others. So it's kind of an accounting exercise, but an important one, so that we know accurately how much it really costs us to deliver services. If somebody asks us the cost of doing parade support with the police department, what is that cost? We want to have the best answer we can. And so some of what we're doing is going to do a much better cost allocation to understand that. The second thing is to look at the possibility, although we won't do it this year, but look at the possibility in the future of doing a method that's called priority-based budgeting, where we would use some particular systems to make sure that the budgetary dollars that we have get allocated to the highest priorities for the community and the organization. And so we'll be taking a look at that this year. We won't make a decision necessarily to move in that direction, but we'll be taking a look at that.
Okay.
And funding for nonprofits. We have been, as a city, matching some funds. We get the Community Development Block Grants that our Human Services Commission and our Affordable Housing Commission go through a process to assist nonprofits through a process that they do to apply for some of those fundings. The city has been giving some additional money in there, some matching funds in there. One of the things that we've seen is that the amount of funding coming from the federal government has decreased over the last several years, and the city's match has not increased. And so the amount of funding to some of our nonprofits who do an incredible job for our citizens has not necessarily kept pace. And so we need to take a look at that and see if there's ways that we might be able to be more helpful. Our nonprofits in this community do an incredible job, and the city as a whole, I think, has had a philosophy of a hand up rather than a handout. And I think most of the nonprofits that we work with have that same philosophy. And so we need to take a look and see where we can help.
Okay. Okay. Well, guys, we've covered a lot of ground. You got a lot of work to do here between now and December to achieve some of these goals, and we'll all benefit from that when that occurs, and look forward to it. Anything else you want to mention before we call it a day here?
Well, luckily we have a lot of help in doing this. We have good leadership from the City Council. We have outstanding city staff team members in all of our departments. So there are over 700 city employees who are regular full-time employees that will be helping on all this. So many hands make light work, so we're looking forward to that.
And I always appreciate the fact that we've got great community members and business owners in this community that are always willing to pitch in and help with all of these tasks.
It is nice to see that in this community, kind of all of the folks you've mentioned, all the kind of categories of folks work together as a team instead of working against each other in some cases, which may be the case elsewhere, not around here, I'm happy to say. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate it very much, you guys taking the time and explaining to the community what you're looking for ahead in 2013. And I will say thanks to you folks, the viewers, again this month and every month for tuning in to Loveland's Talking, and we will look forward to seeing you here again next month. Take care. Bye-bye.